This is the Blood Red podcast from the Liverpool Echo.
Liverpool won, Mainz 0. They left it late in the day, but the Reds have their first win of pre-season. Owen Beck's vicious low cross put into his own net by Luca Killian in the dying moments as Jurgen Klopp's Reds saw off his old side out in Austria in front of 3,500 fans. Joining me, Guy Clarke, to look back on the game, result, and everything in between here on Blood Red, we have our Liverpool correspondent, Paul Gorst. Gorsty, I have to say, how that game finished, I'm worried for the season coming that it's going to be sort of late rewrites and late goals all over again. It was sort of giving me cold sweats.
Yeah, I've seen someone tweet saying Liverpool fans have been dreaming of a Killian scoring for them, but not quite Luca Killian for Mainz. I thought that was a good line, which I might have used had I not already filed something on Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain, who was brought off after 45 minutes. 23 players actually getting involved, a little bit of a run out, but it was a typical pre-season game, wasn't it? In that it was really struggled to get going and no real chances either end. Not a whole lot to write home about, to be honest, but ultimately a decent workout for Liverpool. Plenty of minutes in the legs for players who need it and who will be important down the line. The likes of Trent Alexander-Arnold, obviously he hasn't played too much since that injury for England, and Salah thought Salah did okay. Sadio Mane, Naby Keita was probably the outstanding performer, wasn't he? Certainly in the first half for Liverpool. And then you got a little bit of a glimpse into the future, as it were, with Cade Gordon, who impressed me again. Harvey Elliott, of course, playing in that midfield three. Still think his best position might be on the right of the front three, but ultimately, win, lose or draw, it's minutes in the legs and gas in the tank, and they move on to Hertha Berlin on Thursday.
Yeah, that's it, isn't it? It's sort of the end of the second week out in Austria, but it is the first sort of 90-minute run out, albeit obviously the two 11s had 45 each. So we are still, and it feels like they've been out there ages and that we're deep into pre-season already, but we are still at the stage of sort of just adding minutes into legs. You mentioned a few of the names there. In particular, let's, I suppose, focus in on that first half 11. It was kind of the strongest side at the moment. Jurgen Klopp's kind of got available to him almost. Who were the ones who stood out for you? I have to say, for me, Naby Keita was a real surprise.
Yeah. He got the highest rating in my player ratings. I think I give him an 8. Just looked sharp, didn't he? It was a typical Keita performance, typical good Keita performance, if you like, where every time he got it, he looked lively and wiry, and he just glides past players and picks the right pass at times, wasn't he? And there was one bit of skill down the kind of right-hand side of Mainz's defence where he wriggled away from 2 or 3 and kind of got dragged back, and it wasn't a foul, but should have been. But yeah, he looked sharp, and I think he's going to need to build on it significantly. Okay, it's great playing a nice, neat and tidy 45 minutes against Mainz, but he needs to maybe kind of dominate games more than decorate them. And his season ended really, really disappointingly, didn't it? He was brought off against Real Madrid, in kind of embarrassing circumstances, really. It was 2 minutes before half time, and rather than make the change at half time, Klopp dragged him off with a minute to go, and that was kind of an indictment of his performance. And he wasn't, I don't think he played again. I think that was the end of his season there in April. Yeah. So yeah, it was a good 45 minutes for him. And now he needs to build on it against Hertha, and then he's got to build on it in the friendlies at Anfield, and then take it into the new season, and hopefully can really start to put a string of games together and show that he is a £50 million midfielder. Because for all the nice little bits that we've seen over the 3 years, I don't think he's convinced me that he is someone who should be Liverpool's third most expensive signing of all time.
Yeah, it's the tease of him, isn't it? That you see those performances, it's within there, but it is the availability and the consistency with which he needs to be able to do it. All well and good doing it, as you say, for 45 minutes in the first 90-minute run out in pre-season, but let's wait and see what's happening in November, December. Another one to kind of really talk about is Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain. You referenced him beforehand. He's playing that central attacking role, obviously in absence of Roberto Firmino. He had clearly the best chance of that first half, but I suppose it sort of shows that natural attacking instinct. He will have to hone on the training ground. That won't just come.
Yeah, definitely. I feel a little bit sorry for him, to be honest. I know Klopp mentioned back in April that they were looking at maybe trying him as a bit of a number 9 at some stage. And given Liverpool's run in, they couldn't really test it out. They just needed to win every game and just get the season over with and hope that they were in the top 4. And that's ultimately what they've done. So he's had to wait for his chance as this kind of new number 9, if you like, reinventing himself a little bit. But he said as recently as last week, I think, that he still sees himself as a central midfielder. And this was a sticking point for why he left Arsenal 4 years ago. Arsene Wenger was playing him, pretty much played most of his career in the front line, didn't he? In wide positions, and he played as a wing back at times, and very rarely did Wenger trust him as a centre mid. Klopp did when he came to Anfield 4 years ago, and he was looking like he was going to blossom into a superstar until he got that knee injury against Roma, and he's never really recovered from that. But it's 3 years ago now, that injury. So maybe this is a little bit of not so much a make or break summer for him, but it's if Liverpool do sign another midfielder, then that's going to be obviously another body in the path for him to play in centre mid. So maybe he'll get more games as a centre forward, but it's a tough one to learn, isn't it? Being Liverpool's number 9, and I think at a time when Manchester United are signing Jadon Sancho and Chelsea getting linked with Erling Haaland and Man City getting linked with Kane, Liverpool are looking on reinventing the midfielder into a number 9, and kind of shows where the clubs are, doesn't it? Maybe off the pitch financially, and I feel a little bit sorry for him really, because that's not of his doing, but might be some kind of people who will be overly critical of him if he doesn't, turn into a natural number 9 who's looked like he's played there his whole career.
No, most definitely, and as you say, he's kind of a frustration for the player, as you say himself, just still waiting to kind of really launch off with his Liverpool career. But another who's looking to do that, and maybe we got a first glimpse to the opening day of the season, was Ibrahima Konate and Joel Matip partnering one another at centre half. There's plenty of power in that defensive duo, isn't there? And I suppose we are now beginning to already to sort of brief glimpses, seeing exactly what Ibrahima Konate is all about.
Yeah, he wasn't overly troubled, was he, in that first half? But Klopp said after the game that Gomez and Van Dijk aren't going to be risked against Hertha Berlin on Thursday. So maybe it's going to be a game where Klopp doesn't use 23 players or 22 players. It might be a game where you see players get 60, 70 minutes in the legs. And I think Konate and Matip now are pretty much nailed on, aren't they, if they stay clear of injury to play against Norwich on the 14th of August. And I don't think there should be any concerns with that. I think Konate looks the real deal. We've only seen him in fleeting glimpses at the moment, having in a Liverpool shirt, but you can just see him kind of glide across the pitch. His recovery pace is incredible. He looks fairly comfortable on the ball as well, and Joel Matip, if he stays fit, he's top class for me. I think before Konate's arrival, I'd probably say when everyone's fit, Liverpool's defenders, then it's Matip and Van Dijk, and that obviously is a big if with Matip. He only played 10 times last season in the Premier League, I think. So, yeah, the only kind of obstacle for Matip is just to stay fit, and so far so good. I think they've got the makings of a good, solid centre-back partnership while we wait on the big number 4 to get back on the pitch.
Yeah, as you say, if they're not going to be risked against Hertha Berlin, that game's sort of just over 2 weeks away from the start of the Premier League season, isn't it? It may well end up being sort of not until after that first international break we sort of start seeing Gomez and Van Dijk really starting games. And I suppose that is the case, isn't it? Precaution is going to be king with those two. Yeah,
definitely. Especially when you've got players fit in that position, as it might be a little bit easier for Klopp to take the gamble and roll the dice if he was if he encountered something similar to last season where they were dropping like flies as centre back. But now at the moment he's got, as things stand, Konate and Matip look like they're going to be starting against Norwich. Nat Phillips was left out as a precaution on Tuesday, but he got 45 minutes tonight, and I think he kind of relished the seniority alongside Billy Kometio. So Liverpool have got players there, haven't they? Ben Davies, of course, wasn't there today. He's flown back to England for what was described as a private matter. So not linked to any impending transfer away from Liverpool. But if he does stay, then he's obviously another body who can play in that position in certain games. But it's gone from famine to feast in the centre-back ranks for Liverpool, and I think Klopp is willing to be patient and take precautions and slowly ease Gomez and Van Dijk in particular back into it.
Yeah, we'll have to obviously see how long it does take them to fully recover. But in terms of, you mentioned Nat Phillips there, Curtis Jones, Queven Kelleher, Nico Williams, all sort of their first involvement during pre-season. But the three of them there, Jones, Phillips and Williams, all played in that second 45. And just briefly touching on it, it was sort of those guys and a number of young players, and in particular Kai Gordon and Owen Beck, who in the end got the assist for the goal that we've not really spoken about. Those two in particular look really impressive so far on this pre-season tour. Yeah,
I think they've taken the chance, haven't they? Definitely. Kai Gordon looks like a real talent, but he's someone who's already obviously played in the Championship, made his debut in December, I think, and then obviously made the move to Liverpool shortly after. He played under Wayne Rooney at Pride Park. No, it's not Pride Park. It's the iPro now, is it?
No, it's Pride Park again these days. Yeah, no, it's flipped back round. Yeah.
So he's obviously got was good enough to be given a run out in the second tier, and that was something that obviously Harvey Elliott had done when Liverpool brought him to the club. Made his debut for Fulham in the League Cup at Millwall, and then played against Newcastle or Southampton. I think still the youngest player in the Premier League, and Gordon seems to be someone who's, following a little bit of a similar path. Still early days, of course. I don't think he's going to be playing any kind of senior games next season, but just kind of looking ahead to the youth ranks and players who are kind of coming up the ranks on that side of things. He's going to be playing 18s football this season. I'd be surprised if he did play 23s, but it's looking like a really strong selection of young players in the academy at the moment, and full credit to Peter Matos to have those conversations with Pep Linders and with Klopp to basically let them know that these lads are definitely worth looking at and giving them a go, and players like Leighton Clarkson continuing his development. I thought it was interesting with him the other day when he was talking about kind of taking on responsibility, because he's already been involved with the first team in the Champions League at Michelin, and he was kind of thinking, well, I've already been around this group, so I'm going to show Kai Gordon and Owen Beck and Tyler Morton, just what it's all about, and this is how it works and whatever else, and that was good to hear. So there are loads of players who you look at now in Liverpool's youth ranks and think this lad's going to have a career, that this lad could do a bit, and it's just going to be interesting to see it develop.
Yeah, definitely. Right, before we go then, there is a bit of transfer news to get into. You mentioned before, obviously, Ben Davies flying back to the UK. That not to do with transfer business, but another player who is still out in Austria for the time being is Harry Wilson, but it looks as though a move to the Championship could be beckoning for him.
Yeah, Fulham, isn't it? We've seen that the last few days. Fulham have been edging nearer and nearer, and it looks like he could be on his way. People at the club playing it down a little bit, saying he was left out as a bit of a precaution in case that move does come to fruition. But I think it would be quite telling that he didn't play a minute. Liverpool were looking for around about 15 million for him, but I think now they've had to kind of reluctantly accept that they might need to be looking for a little bit less. So I think it possibly somewhere between 10 and 12 will be the figure. And Marco Silva seems to be keen on a player who's got plenty of Championship experience, and obviously he's been around the Wales setup for quite some time now. So that is certainly one to keep an eye on. More cash in the Liverpool coffers, as it were, for incomings. And I suspect Wilson may have played his last game for Liverpool.
Yeah, well, we started with Killian. We may well end with it, because the pot may be getting raised high enough. No, I'm only joking. Of course, that is it from us, though, here, looking back on the win over Mainz with our Liverpool correspondent, Paul Gorst, myself, Guy Clarke, and thanks for joining us here on Blood Red. Until next time, it's bye for now.
This is the Blood Red Podcast.